What's kol basar? Kol basar ishchit et
כל מקום,
Including the animals.
including the
מקום
animals.
משתנה.
Well, what happens? How the animals get influenced? So Rashi tells us that even when there was immorality amongst the people became full of ta'ava. Right? We said last week's parasha. We said v'tipakach einehem v'lo yiboshushu. When they ate from the tree of Etz Hadat, suddenly they had the da'at, and we said that was the yetzer, the ta'ava, and then lo yiboshushu, they were embarrassed from each other. That means they saw the male and the female organs, and they had a desire. And now in this week's parasha, they went too much with their ta'avot, too much with their desires. And it went in corruption. And not only what was mutar, we said betov lera, there's good and there's bad. There's something which you're supposed to use with ta'ava to build a family, to have children, that's good. But when it goes too far with your own ta'ava and desires just for the pleasure, then it can go to illicit relationships or illegal relationships, forbidden relationships. And that affects everything. There is a tumah which HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't stand. And he said even the animals were nizgakot she'enan minan. They were going to do crossbreeding. Even the male with the male. And it has the influence on the surroundings. That's called hashpat hasviva. Hashpat hasviva means the influence of the surroundings. Okay, that doesn't just mean if you live in England, you like football, in America, you like basketball. That's the influence of the surrounding. But hashpat hasviva is also direct. You live next to a tzaddik, you become more like a tzaddik. You live next to Rasha, you become more like a Rasha. And he said that even the animals had that influence. And I heard that it's nowadays in San Francisco, it's the gay capital of the world. Even animals, the birds have seen homosexual behavior. And the Torah tells us is Rashi. It says that's what happens. When the tumah fills the atmosphere of the world, it has influences on animals. That's why everything had to be destroyed. Says Rashi, when there's zima, and that means this destruction comes to the world. Everyone's destroyed. Natural disasters, hurricanes, floods, wars. Says the Al-Sheikh HaKadosh, Rabbi Moshe Al-Sheikh. Avon zima, when there's immorality, that brings a mabul to the world. And mabul can be water, mabul can be fire. It means can be wars. People die in wars. They didn't say if you're good or bad. Andra al-Musya means good and bad people, young and old, women, children. When there's a flood, there's a hurricane, there's a disaster, earthquake, everything dies. What was Noach? Says the Maharal, Noach was Ish Adama. He was Ish, which was Sholet al Ta'avotav. He was Ish Adama. Adam comes from the Adama, that's why it's called Adama. But Noach was called Ish Adama because he had a control over his desires. He was Tzaddik Yesod Olam. When Noach was born, he was born already Mahul. Mahul was already born circumcised. That means he already had, when he was born, he had control over his desires, over his drives.
Yosef.
Drives. Like Yosef HaTzadik, like Moshe Rabbeinu. That's it, Tzaddik Yesod Olam. What is it, Tzaddik Yesod Olam? It's Tzaddik that the whole world survives for him. That means he survives. That means the whole reason why Hashem didn't destroy the whole world and he just put a flood is because of Noach. That's Tzaddik Yesod Olam. Who is a Tzaddik Yesod Olam? Says the Sfarim HaKadoshim. Someone is a Shomer Brit Kodesh. That's all you have to do. Shomer Brit Kodesh, you're a Tzaddik Yesod Olam. Like Yosef HaTzadik, like Moshe Rabbeinu, like Noach. The whole world is Kayam b'schut this Tzaddik who is Shomer Brit Kodesh. And that was Noach. And that's what we call it with Noach. When the whole world was saved for him. He was saved from the whole world. When the whole world was destroyed, that means when Rashi says Mabul Ba'al Olam and destroys Tovim and Ra'im, innocent and not innocent. That means only people who are living by chesed. That means there's people who deserve to live bidin because their life has meaning. Some people, when they're alive, it changes the world. They do chesed, they do good things, maybe good zakah, they study Torah, they fulfill the will of God, they're living for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Their life has meaning and purpose, and they live for din. And some people, they live for chesed. And like the world needs to continue. So everyone's there. There's animals, there's birds, there's trees, and there's some people as well. So what happens when they don't do anything bad, well, nothing good. And when there's a disaster, then tovim oreget tovim el ra'im. But the tzaddikim of the world, that they live their lives for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then they live for din. They will be saved, even when there's a hurricane. And that's what means tzaddik yisrael. This says there, the Shiur there. Now I want to draw your attention to one of the foundations of the principles of Judaism. And I'm going to give an introduction. And this is maybe a sensitive topic to most people. But this is going to be the main part of the shiur today. And this is the topic of having children. Everyone has different views about it. And I want to share with you the Torah's views. It's a small obligation as Rabbi giving the shiur. And I think it's something for everyone to learn from. Even if you have children or you don't have children, it's irrelevant. It's the Torah we're studying. And it says, Vayi Noach ben 500 shana. Maybe we'll introduce the question. Does anyone know how many children Noach had? How many children? 3. So very good. In fact, in the time of the Mabul, he had 3 children. We don't know how many he had afterwards. Maybe the Torah doesn't tell us. But he definitely had 3 at the time of the Mabul. Do you know how old Noach was when he had his children? Torah, it's written in the Torah.
500?
Very good. 500. Can you imagine? People get married, and after a year, usually, it's normal, they have a child. Sometimes it takes a bit longer. But if a person's already waiting for 2 years and there's nothing, then it's panics. Start speaking to doctors, specialists, what's wrong, what's going on. After 2 years, and it's very stressful. And people have to wait for many years. This 10 years is a long time, very long time. In fact, there's halakha. After 10 years, there's a halakha to bring children. You need to get remarried. Yitzchak Avinu was waiting 20 years. Noach had to wait until he was 500 years old to have children.
But is it the same sfira? So I'm not sure that.
So very good. So thank you for raising that point. Well, I'm just going to excuse me. I'm going to put on the air conditioning and then I'm going to answer your question. Thank you. So, Gilad said, is it the same sfira? Which really means is the count was different. In those days, people lived much older. So, in fact, we know that from the age of 100, they used to have children. That was the normal age. People got married, and up to the age of 100. If it's normal at the age